Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode. Wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you guys are listening to us on, as always, thank you guys so much for the support. Thanks for checking this episode out. And thank you again for sharing this podcast with those who might be interested in the game and coaching and just basketball in general. So welcome, guys. And here we go with another episode. I am very happy X's and O's wise, whenever I get to talk defense as a coach personally, as I'm sure many of you have listened for a while know, like I love pressing. I love up-tempo defense. I love just talking about the mixtures of all the types of defenses that teams run, man, 2-3, half court trap, 1-3-1, everything involving defense. And so to have the opportunity to discuss defense with my guest today, that is something I'm very much looking forward to. We're going to talk in a general sense about the idea of mixing and blending defenses. We'll talk also about the buzz defense in particular, which I know some of you may have heard of and some of you may only know a little bit about. I know I personally am looking forward to learning a little bit about it as well. But in general, we're just going to talk some defense, talk about defensive strategy, mixing up defenses, blending different defensive styles. And so if you're a defensive-minded person like me, this should be a lot of fun. And I'm very happy to be joined by the varsity girls basketball coach out at Crestview High School. Coach Coach Blatch is joining us today. Coach, appreciate you coming on, spending some time talking to us. How we doing?
Coach, thanks for having me. Really cool opportunity, and I'm doing well and excited to talk with you.
Yeah, really, really excited. Let's jump right in, Coach. Let's talk about your basketball journey, your coaching journey. Where has the game taken you throughout your journey, and what ultimately led you out to Crestview?
I've been really fortunate. I've had a lot of great experiences through the game. Like you said, I'm currently the varsity girls coach at Crestview High School, which is a pretty small school in Columbiana, Ohio. We just wrapped up. This is my 6th season out there as head coach. It's my 8th year overall as a head coach. I've been coaching. I'm currently 35 years old. I've been coaching since I graduated high school. And it was something that through school, I don't think I ever really gave a lot of thought to. Obviously, I was a player, and, when our high school season wrapped up, I wasn't planning on playing at the next level and wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do. And, I actually remember at my graduation party, my varsity coach, came to me like completely out of the blue and said, like, why don't you coach our JV team next year? And I'm 18 years old. I was going to go to college. I went to Youngstown State, which I was just kind of commuting. It's a half hour away from where I live. And I thought, well, wow, that kind of sounds like a good opportunity. Well, we realized soon after that our school actually had a policy that you couldn't be like a paid coach until you were 21. So I wasn't able to actually coach the JV, but what we did instead is I started coaching some youth teams. Our high school didn't really have much of a youth program at that time, so I kind of got that started, coaching like some 5th and 6th graders. And from there, did that for a few years and kind of worked my way up to middle school. And then I became the JV coach and, continuing to work with some younger groups, until I was able to get an opportunity to become the head boys coach at my alma mater. Was there for 2 years, and then this opportunity at Crestview arose. I ended up getting a teaching job at Crestview as well.
Nice.
And we've had a lot of success. I'm blessed with some great kids and great coaching staff around me. My brother's been with me for the last 6 years on staff as well. So that's a cool thing that we kind of get to share.
Cool.
And this year we're coming off a year where we had a lot of success. Our varsity group won 21 games, which was one shy of the school record. We ended up winning our first league championship in our tenure. I think the first since 2008 or 9 for the school. Finished second in the district, and we're able to do that with a really young team. Our team this season, really, we had no seniors, we had one junior. So a lot of nights we were starting 2 freshmen and 3 sophomores. So we have a really nice young core coming back. And again, like I said, just basketball's been good to me, and Crestview's been good to me, and I'm really proud of the kids that we have had and the kids that we have coming up now.
You know, that's fantastic. That's awesome. And to have such a successful season like you did with such a young group, I mean, that must be really exciting. And you must be really looking forward to what you're going to be able to do with them next year. That sounds great.
Yeah, we just some really hardworking kids, that even though they're young, they've played a lot of basketball. They're in the gym a lot, they're in the weight room a lot, and I'm getting the text from one of them as we speak, asking to come in and get some shots up tomorrow after school. So I have to get back to her here soon. And I mean, just some girls that are very committed, and that kind of makes my job easy.
Yeah, that is awesome, Coach. And I know one of the things that we talked a little bit about off air is that there's a lot of sets that you like to run on the offensive end. You mentioned about how you were set heavy last year, and so I was just curious on the offensive end, what sort of sets or set actions did you find some success in this past year?
Yeah, it's funny with as young as we are by the end of the year, I kind of looked at our playbook and thought like, man, we're running a lot more stuff than what we normally do. Um, I kind of wondered coming into the year if we'd have to cut back a little bit just due to our inexperience. But we've had a nice high IQ group of girls that picked up on a lot of different things. So as far as our sets go, my primary goal when we're running sets is to take advantage of the skills of our best kids. We're the sets that we run are probably going to vary year to year. Now, next year we might have a lot of continuity just because we're pretty much bringing the same group back. But we'll come into each season looking at our most skilled few kids offensively and try to figure out what's the best way to get them the ball in positions where they can play with some space, that they can get an advantage. And what we really did this year is we've got a sophomore post player, very talented young lady, and she's our second leading scorer, but
Hmm.
most of what we would run set wise was to her because we felt like our perimeter people, the ball's kind of in their hands a lot. They're able to kind of create some without a play, and they're able to get going and transition a little bit more. Where we felt like we wanted to make sure that we weren't neglecting the post when things slowed down. So we ran a lot of things to try to get the uh, you know, we sometimes out of a horns alignment, sometimes out of a box alignment. We would do some different things. And they're all simple. When I say we run a lot of stuff, these are the majority of our sets are quick hitting, 2 pass things that are easily memorized and that we can go to a couple times here and
Sure.
there during a game and try to steal some points. Uh, you know, Probably the easiest thing that we did to kind of isolate our post player is it's the dumbest thing, but we got great looks. It's just out of a box. We would put her on the left block and we would just run everybody else over to the left side and overload the side and kind of take away backside help and hit the wing and go right in. And when teams really try to take that away, a lot of times they would just leave that ball side corner trying to sink down. And we hit numerous threes off of that action as
Hmm.
well. I mean, again, you could put this in 2 minutes. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
nothing
yeah. But it
about it.
sounded like it was going to the strengths and the skill set of the players you had.
But oh yeah, just simple to run. We got our post girl a lot of deep catches. She got some good things, and and again, then just when help comes, when teams try to take that action away, just being basketball players and seeing what's available and being ready to shoot. Uh, we've run one out of a horn set for years that we call big, that we've had great success where, we'll hit one elbow out of horns. And after we do that, the point guard just cuts straight up the middle to the rim. Our other elbow girl will just kind of set like a fake down screen, and then the point guard cross screens for her.
Mm,
It is just a really easy way to get the defense occupied a little bit. And then I honestly, probably 80% of the time when we've gone to it, we're getting a deep post catch for our best post player right off that entry. So again, just, it's a two pass thing. It's nothing creative. I'm sure lots of teams run similar stuff, but, we like, there's been numerous times where late in games, where maybe we've, you know, kind of freelanced a little bit or played out of our dribble drive
yeah.
stuff a lot. And, hey, it's a close game, fourth quarter, where we've needed to make a call. And maybe we picked something out that we haven't really used that game and, gotten something easy, a deep post catch, something to draw foul or get a layup on. And that, has really helped us late. So, I think it's important to have some choices. When I say we're set heavy, I mean, I also feel like the majority of possessions we're giving our kids a lot of freedom. I mean, I'm not somebody that wants to try to micromanage
Yeah.
every movement, but when things slow down a little bit, you really need one. I think it's been nice for us to to have a few different things that we could go to.
Yeah, no, I mean it, and I I think that the key I get out of that is that it's simple. Like you said, a lot of this stuff is just kind of easy to run, and it sounds like what you kind of did is just assess the strengths of your players and just play to that and find the sets and find the actions that just will give them the best opportunity to be successful.
Absolutely, that's really what we try to do, and also with us, like we don't start putting a bunch of sets in too early in the preseason either. I mean, we try to get in our base stuff and we'll add little by little as the year goes on. So our playbook game one versus our playbook come tournament time is gonna look different for sure. And throughout the year,
Hmm.
there may be one or two things that we put in early that we just decide, what, we're not really getting what we hoped out of that and just kind of scrap them and we're
Yeah.
replace them with something else. So, there's never a time where, hey, today at practice we're going to put in 12 sets or anything like that. We kind of add
Yeah.
up little by little, and our girls, I was impressed that they really took to it and were able to execute at a really high level.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Coach, let's talk about defense. And I wanted to, before we kind of talk about in general mixing and blending defenses, I think you are probably, if not definitely one of the first guests I've talked to that even implements a buzz defense. And I know a little bit about it, but there might be those listening who might not be too sure what that really means or what that looks like. So can we start with having you kind of talk about the philosophy behind why it is that you run it and kind of what it is and how it looks like for your team?
Yeah. So, first of all, this is certainly nothing that we've created.
Sure.
But it is kind of, I'll say in our area, I don't think I've seen anybody run this exactly.
Hmm.
So it's a little bit of a change up. I would not recommend it being your base. There's been some years where we've maybe run it, maybe even overused it, but I do like it. We've had a lot of success. Basically, it's a half court trap, uh, where you're essentially playing passing lanes. So rather than guarding the ball straight up, so like if the opposing team is dribbling the ball down and they have a guard dribbling the ball down near the center circle, we're going to have our top two basically play angled at that center circle. so that any pass to the left or the right has to either be a lob pass over us or has to be like a slow bounce. So we're trying to cut out all direct line passes rather than squaring up the ball. And what we have found when our angles are good, we're very good at it. Trust me, there's been plenty of times where our angles haven't been as good.
Yeah.
And you can tell because if teams are just whipping the ball all over the place, then that's a pretty good sign that we're not doing a good enough job of playing out in passing lanes. But if the ball goes to a wing, then similarly, the guard on that side is coming, playing the passing lane back to the top. The wing on that side is playing the passing lane to the corner. So same thing, we don't want to allow any straight line passes. Now, we're not actually guarding the ball super aggressively. But we found that there's people around. A lot of kids kind of get panicky because it's just kind of unconventional. If they drive the ball, like they have some space to drive it, but then our center girl is playing between the ball and the basket. So she's always kind of there. If they put it on the floor, we're going to double it just aggressively and try to force them to make a play. If the ball goes to the corner, our wing is going to follow it, and then our center is going to kick out, and now we're aggressively trapping the corner. And then obviously we need to rotate to the ball side block into the middle. So, we let players kind of pick their spots a little bit. I don't really want it to look exactly the same every possession, but as a general rule, we're kind of soft trapping the wing and top and then hard trapping the corner. And really, when it goes corner, we're hoping to use our length and use our rotations to try to force a turnover there. So that's kind of the short, basic version of it. We teach, and I got this somewhere else, but we just call it home bases, where when we break this down kind of in like a shell drill type deal, where all right, the ball's on top, where would our home bases be?
I like that terminology, the home base. That's good.
Yeah, I like that a lot as well. I think that's just a quick, even during game time, you can just shout out from the bench, home base, get to your bases, whether the ball's on top, the ball's on the wing, the ball's on the corner, and everybody then should kind of know where to go. That's kind of the details behind it. I think to get really good at it, you need kids that can read. We talk a lot about reading eyes and reading shoulders. Like if we've got the ball in a trap and you're a rotator from there, most people are gonna stare down where they're making that next pass. So can you make something look open and then go and take it away, moving on airtime and try to get a deflection or steal? For us, there has been games. Our second game of this season, we played a team that ended up in the Final Four of the state of Ohio, and we kind of purposely we felt like the Buzz was going to be a good matchup, against them. They beat us by I think 35 the year before. And we wanted to do something different. Our season opener was a team that we felt like we could kind of handle without showing a whole lot. So, we played straight man in the opener, and we played straight Buzz basically exclusively in that second game. And we actually ended up getting a win there, where it was just, I think they were confused. They weren't expecting it for a while. Eventually, they made some adjustments, but, we probably went up 12, 14 points in the first half where they really just weren't getting real good looks. So I encourage coaches, if it's something that you're interested in, give it a look. Certainly doesn't need to be your primary defense, but it is so unconventional that, you might be surprised that some teams just
Mm.
kind of struggle to attack it.
Well, and I think with that, I'm sure if you haven't seen it before, it probably looks like a straight like 2-3 at first, and then it
Mhm.
gets really confusing because it has kind of like some of those 2-3 like type principles, but it isn't a 2-3.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I even know, like, sometimes you see that 2-1-2 alignment, like in the full court, and like the middle kids running sideline to sideline. Like, it's not that, it's not a straight 2-3, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I said, I like it. One, it's something we could spring on people and maybe confuse them. And two, if we get using it and teams scout us, even if it's maybe not part of the game plan for a specific game, it might be something that they're going to spend practice time worrying about, and then maybe we're running something else as well. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's been good to us in spurts. I said, I'll admit there's been times where we've probably overused it, where by the end of this season, I like that. I think it was more of a change up for us rather than like a base. We were playing mostly man the second half of the year. But, being able to kind of have that in your back pocket, I think is a nice weapon to have again in a lot of matchups.
And so as you kind of talked about kind of that balance of how much to use it versus, when to pull back a little bit. What's the process or the thought process between when you mix using that with your straight man defense?
Well, so I feel like, and this is something that I'm kind of learning more and more. I
Sure.
think you want to have your identity first, and maybe early in the year, you know, I think that we probably weren't a very good man-to-man team. Being as young as we were, you know, we probably weren't the most physical team, um, to just sit in the stance and lock
Mm-hmm.
somebody up and navigate a ton of screening actions and all the things that you need to do to be a great man-to-man team. Uh, I think the buzz is, I think it helped us at times early. I also think maybe subconsciously I was bailing our players out a little bit early in the season by kind of relying on it too much. So, as the season went on, I really felt like, look, to beat the best teams on our schedule consistently, we needed to be able to play more straight man. So
Mm-hmm.
my recommendation is, first, whatever you want your identity to be, whether that's a man-to-man team, a 2-3 zone team, a pressing team, I would recommend, let's get really good at something first. But going with that, I am a coach that I think it's good to have a few options,
Of course.
because you never know when you're going to need something. I think moving forward for us, our maybe ideal breakdown is we're probably 75-80% man, and then the buzz making up a lot of the rest of that, playing that, a quarter of the time or so. Uh, but I do think that you want to be confident doing one thing and being really good at that one thing. But I always think about it too, like as an offensive coach, you know, it's hard to play against somebody that is going to give you different looks throughout the game, and coming out of a timeout, you're not sure what to expect. So I do think there's some value in, having a change up or two as well.
When did you kind of come to that realization that you thought your man-to-man defense was lacking or where it wasn't needing to be? Was it a practice, a game, just kind of a self-reflection thing, or what kind of brought about the fact that you thought maybe your man-to-man defense needed some work to it?
Yeah, good question. So we so this year we finished the year 21-3. We lost one league game, and like I said, this was a little bit unexpected. We knew we had a good team, but just how quickly are the freshmen and sophomores going to come along? Well, so we had a big league matchup. We were tied for first with this other school, and it was right around mid-season. And we had them at our place, and we hyped the game up. It's the best crowd we've had in 6 years. Our fans were amazing, staff was amazing, and we felt like, I mean, I'll admit, and I don't know if I was right or wrong, but at that time, I just did not believe that we were good enough straight man to beat that team. They're very good. They can shoot it. They're big. They move the ball really well. And so, we felt like they maybe had a weak link or two. So we actually started the game triangle in two. And that's something that we've done periodically. And they just torched us. I mean, just right. I mean, it was, and give them a ton of credit. Their fifth starter starts the game by knocking down back-to-back jumpers. And I think mentally that was, whether they'd say it or not, I think it kind of made our players go like, "Oh crap, this isn't gonna work."
Yeah.
It was a little bit deflating, and we lose the game by 11. And after the game, I mean, we were down. Just I personally, I just felt like I didn't do a very good job preparing us to win the game. We thought we did. We thought we had a good plan, but I think it was a case of like, we didn't truly have an identity yet. And it kind of showed in that game that I thought our opponent knew who they were, and we didn't quite know who we were yet.
Mm-hmm.
So from that point on, we players and coaches kind of came to the realization, listen, we got to get better playing half court man. We can do some other things as needed. So, we really kind of forced ourselves to stay in that as much as we could. Got a little bit better. We actually got a televised, the local TV station did a game of the week between us and another team that was kind of fighting for the league title. They've got a great, excellent player, senior, won league player of the year. So we thought, look, if we can guard them, we're going to probably be able to guard anybody. And we held them to 30 some points, and we won the game.
Yeah. Awesome.
With a huge win. And I thought that gave us a lot of confidence. And then moving forward, the team that beat us by 11 the first time, we went to their place late in the year, played straight man 100% of the game. We actually beat them in overtime, and it ended up kind of clinching the league title there. So, again,
Mm-hmm.
I want to have options. I want to have different things, but I also think that as a coach and as a program, you need to know who you are and have that identity first. So I think moving forward, we're in a little bit better spot where, we know our man-to-man stuff is going to be number one. We're going to mix in the buzz. We might mix in another look or two as well. But I think we kind of need to have our priorities in line there early in the season.
And speaking of mixing in other stuff, I know that you also will throw in a little bit of triangle in two as well, which is uh very unique in that I don't see it very often. I don't know if you see it often, but I know here in Phoenix it's not used often. So I was curious about what was the thought process between us with sprinkling a little bit of triangle and two in there.
Well, so we kind of looked at a lot of the best teams in our league, and we felt like many of them were heavily reliant on their two best players. And one thing that I think kind of made our team unique and kind of led to us having the success that we did is that we were fairly balanced. Now, if you look at our roster, our leading scorer averaged 20, our second leading scorer averaged 12, but then we had a girl with 10, and then everybody else that we were playing, even if the stats weren't big, They were capable shooters. Like it's hard not to guard them. Where
Mhm.
you know a few teams in our league, even that are very solid teams, you know, they're number 4, they're number 5. I didn't really feel like we needed to overreact to them. And kind of interestingly enough, like, I know people have just followed like Iowa's women. In the semifinal game against South Carolina, I mean, it wasn't triangle and two, but like they're just ignoring people that they felt like couldn't shoot. And they were
Yeah.
able to beat a team that's probably on paper better than they are, top to bottom. So again, it's not something that we want to overuse, but we've got a couple girls that could get into people defensively. But then when we do it, I really think the zone people are tremendously important because they need to communicate. They need to make
Yeah.
decisions very quickly on, do I go and double the best player if she has it on a skip? Who do I guard? Like, what are our priorities? Like, it's very scouting based, and I thought our zone people did a pretty nice job with that as well. And the other thing that they really need to be able to do is rebound the ball, and that's where at times we've run into a little bit of trouble, where because it's kind of again, it's kind of an unconventional defense, and you're not always like locked into somebody. Sometimes it can be kind of difficult to rebound the ball out of that. So that was something that we had to work on a bit. But listen, I feel like most nights, especially at the high school level, if you can limit somebody's two best kids and make 3, 4, 5 take some shots, I think you're going to be in position to win the game most nights. And we had some success with that. We didn't want to do it, but in our district semifinal game, uh, we played a team with a couple pretty good guards. We were playing man and struggled a little bit. They were quick. They got by us a little bit, and weren't defending quite as well as we wanted to. Uh, we went to the triangle and two in the fourth quarter, and again, I don't think it's something we could have played them the whole game, but we kind of made the right people for us take the shots, and they didn't shoot it very well. We took out their two best kids, and we were able to kind of come back from a little bit of a deficit and win the game. So I thought just without that change up, I don't know how that game would have gone. So again, just kind of having options late in games, late in the season, I think is a good thing to have.
And that's kind of the trick, I feel like, too. If you're gonna do a box and one or a triangle and two, it's kind of like when is the right time to kind of pull a trigger on something like that, because you want to almost go at it like at the exact right time. And I know for me personally, that would always be kind of the struggle that I would have with something like that, is like when would I want to go to something like that, or do I just want to stick with going to a man or something else? And it seems like it's something that could work really well if you know kind of exactly when to do it and how long to put it in. But if you mistime it, then it might not end too well for you.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. You know, a couple times over the years, we've just started the game in it, just kind of thinking. I think it does a couple things. I think it frustrates the other team's best players, and I kind of like the thought of starting the game with something that is gonna kind of physically and mentally wear on the opponent's best kids.
Hmm.
So uh, the other thing is if you do it early, and let's say again, player number 4, player number 5 that aren't their strongest kids, well, what if they, fire up an air ball right off the bat? Well, now what's that kind of doing to them? Like, we're not guarding them real aggressively. You know, there's been a couple times over the years, and again, it's not something that we do a ton, but where it's really, I think, given us a mental advantage early in the game. And eventually we probably get out of it at some point and either play straight man or, go to the buzz or whatever else. But, I think that if somebody kind of is mentally disengaged, I mean, we've had at times opponents' best players just basically stand at half court with their hands on their hips because
Hmm.
they're frustrated and they're not getting the same touches and shots that they normally get. Uh, now I mentioned that semifinal game for
Yeah.
us this year. Again, we had no intention. That was probably plan C for us coming into the game. I was hoping that we didn't need to do that, but in that case, it was kind of more out of necessity. What we were doing wasn't working real well. We were getting broken down off the dribble a little bit, and so I'm not sure if that was anything genius on our part. It was more, hey, we're just not doing a very good job. Let's try something else. But so we've used it in some different ways. But it can the right matchups.
It's, that's kind of the science to it, I suppose. And I was going to ask you about when you're kind of making a game plan defensively on how much man you're going to run, or when you're going to mix in maybe that buzz defense and put in maybe even a triangle into when you're thinking about putting a defensive game plan together. How much of that is dictated on scouting? Do you kind of have a set kind of firm plan in mind where there's going to be, in this particular game, we're going to go, X% in this sort of defense and X% in this sort of defense, or how does that decision kind of get made for you?
Yeah, good question. I think coming into the game, you'd like to have a plan A. Of hey, we're likely to start in this. Most games that's probably going to be our man to man, but it may be with this specific lineup in, we want to press or we want to, go triangle or buzz or whatever that may be. Uh, we are pretty scout heavy. When we scout, I mean, the first thing I'm always looking for is who can shoot the ball. I mean, I think if we're going to know one thing about an opponent, we want to know who's going to be able to hurt us from the 3-point line. If generally you're always going to know who the best players are, but around those best players, do they have people who can spot up and make us pay? Whether that's for really helping out of our man, or whether that's some zone or something kind of out of the ordinary. Uh, we're going to look at their strengths and weaknesses. But again, and I think that we're getting more to this point as a team and as a program. Uh, you want to know who you are too. Like, I don't feel like we need to
Right.
start every game in a different defense just based on who the other team is. I think for us, probably this coming year, I wouldn't be surprised if we start every game playing man. And then from there, hey, all right, as we sub or as the opponent subs, or if this happens, now we're going to go to this zone or this trap or whatever it may be. Uh, so I do think there's kind of an art to it, but I think that we need to give our players an opportunity to really get good at something, and to kind of know who we are as a team. And like I said, I think as the year went on, we probably did a better job of that.
And I think one of the advantages you kind of get if you kind of, like you said, you kind of know who you are and you stick to, the things that you believe in. I think that hopefully takes away that potential of almost like out coaching yourself, so to speak, where
Mhm.
you start to think way too much about maybe what the other team's doing or the exact amount of time you need to spend in man or in another defense, and you can just sort of trust your team at what they're good at. I think that having that trust in your team can hopefully, like I said, take away from that desire to really outthink and almost outcoach yourself by like putting way too much thought into what the other team's doing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like I said, I think we kind of learned this mid-season a bit, where we left that game and
Hmm.
I just didn't feel good about how we had prepared.
Hmm.
And I mean, it certainly wasn't a lack of effort. I mean, honestly, we put probably more effort into that game than there as much effort into that game as any game we'd ever had from a planning perspective. But
Yeah.
in a way, it was probably too much, where I think we got away from maybe what we wanted to do and kind of let them dictate that a little bit more. So I think that's kind of a message that I'm reminding ourselves and I'm reminding our staff. And it's also important, I think, to understand whatever you do defensively, like you're not going to shut somebody out. I think you need to
I wish we
determine.
could.
Oh, yeah, I know. And I've got to remember, you know, we've got a
Mm,
freshman girl, really, really good, very talented girl, averaged 20, second team All Ohio kid as a freshman. But whatever we're running, she's so competitive that coach, they scored twice. We got to do something else.
mhm,
And I'm like, well, yeah, they're good. Like they got good players and they've got good plays, and like we're not going to shut them out. It's not going to matter what we do. So I think that kind of determine what you want to live with, and if the other team makes a few
mhm,
shots under our terms, like, okay, like that's probably not going to be the end of the world. So I think that's a big part of it too, is, figuring out, like for us, like, I said, we got a 6'1" post kid, excellent shot blocker. In 2 seasons, I think she's blocked about 170, 180 shots. Uh,
wow.
so for us, we can live with the ball going into the post, because honestly, she probably gonna block the shot anyway if it goes in there. You know, so we don't worry about it. Now, for a lot of teams, and for some teams that I've had in the past, the ball going to the post could be a major problem if you don't have the personnel to guard down there.
Yeah.
We score one-on-one against our all-state post player rather than send everybody down there and now they're kicking it out for open threes. So like,
Been there
like that's
before.
well, yeah, like just as an example for our team, look, if somebody makes a good move and gets her once, I don't think we really need to adjust much. Okay, they scored on a 6'1" collegiate level player, whatever. Like over the course of the game, we believe that they're not going to do that consistently enough to beat us. And for somebody else's team, it may be completely different, what they prioritize and what they kind of can and can't live with. But I think you kind of need to
Mm,
know to know your players and to know your system, and figure out what if you're going to lose, what are you okay losing by?
yeah. Yeah, yeah, you gotta almost like pick something, right? And no coach wants to do that, but I've had my moments too where I said, well, if you're gonna beat us and you're gonna end up beating us, this way, then I guess of all the ways you could beat us, there's like certain ways or certain things you're like, well, if you're gonna do this against us, right? All right, well, tip my hat to you because that
Mm-hmm.
it just is what it is, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm. So if so, um, you know, defensive styles that you like to do, obviously the man, you'll put in the buzz, you'll put in a little bit of triangle and two. How does that kind of work in terms of your practices? Are you mostly focusing on defensive principles in a man situation and then kind of implementing where the zone type stuff would fit in? Or what do your practices look like in terms of like refining and doing defense?
Yeah, so we spend far more time practicing our man defense than we do anything else. Uh, yeah, the nice thing about the buzz for us is that, honestly, for as effective as it can be, I
Hmm.
don't think it's something that requires a ton of practice time. Now, if you're running that as your main defense and you need to be able to cover 100 different situations, then yeah, it probably takes more. But, honestly, like if man to man is our primary defense and we throw out the buzz and the opponent does a phenomenal job of attacking it, honestly, we're probably just getting out of it and either going back man or doing something else. Like, I'm not claiming to be a master on every single scenario of if the opponent does this or this or this or this. We have our home bases, we have our rules. There's some simple adjustments that we can
Yeah.
make in a huddle at halftime if we felt like we needed to. And I will say, I think our players are pretty smart at kind of adjusting on the fly. But we don't spend a ton of practice time doing like breakdown drills or something for the buzz or for our triangle stuff. Most of that is going to be dedicated to our man-to-man, which again we want to be our base. My recommendation would be, pick whatever you want your base to be, get good at it, then you can add one or two change ups that, like we scrimmage a lot in practice. We try to get up and down a lot where, mid season, we may, hey, let's put 8 minutes on the clock and we're going to play a man to man scrimmage. Then 8 more minutes on the clock and we're going to play a buzz scrimmage, and 8 minutes. And then we're going to play a pressing scrimmage, or where we can work on a bunch of things kind of organically in the context of a game. So we will do a lot of that sort of thing. But as far as like breakdown drills, we're breaking down our man stuff, our ball screen defense, our, guarding cutters and all those scenarios. We don't do that nearly as much with the other stuff.
And so you're, like you said, you focus mostly on the man principles. And so I'm curious, I guess, taking a step back, when you first were implementing the buzz defense or bringing that in, especially because I have a feeling a lot of your players may have not have been exposed to it when you were first like introducing it. Did you find that it took your players a lot of time to get, or once you explained kind of the concepts about playing the passing lanes and things of that nature, that they picked up on it pretty quickly?
They picked up on it pretty quickly. This past season, I think, was our third year running that, third or fourth year, running that in some capacity. So like our returning kids, we put it in that first year. And then since then, you've got a number of kids that are pretty familiar. They really enjoy playing it, so because it's kind of odd, kind of unconventional. I think that the buy-in level was high. Like, I think like, hey, this is kind of cool. It's different. We don't normally see this. But, we just really emphasize, like, get to your home bases and then let's just fly around from there, where we know it's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to look the same every time. There's going to be, every now and again, you're going to be late on a rotation, or maybe we gamble for a steal that we don't quite get. But, whatever we're in, we want aggressive mistakes, try to fly around. We really like getting deflections. We think that, especially if you're a team with some length, that, it's a defense that, because you're in passing lanes, you can get a lot of tip balls. So, if you're playing real hard and you're playing with active hands, even if you're not exactly where you're supposed to be, if we can get a deflection, now somebody runs after it, now we're off on the break. And that kind of frustrates the other team as well. With the team we have this year, we have pretty good length. Now, our guards were small, so the two people we had on top were just fairly average as far as length goes. Now, they're quick and tough, but our middle and our wings had really good length. So that was nice. Like, we played a lot of the time two like post type players together this year. So when we went buzz, one of them kind of goes to the wing. And there's pros and cons of that. They maybe don't cover quite as much ground, but the pro is it's harder to throw the ball over them because they're 5'10" and long arms, and in the girls' game that can be very difficult. So I think home bases is kind of number one for us, and then number two, it's being really active. It's playing with a lot of energy and enthusiasm, active hands, all that stuff that's going to translate, to any defense. And I think that's one reason why we've been able to run multiple things fairly effectively, is that, concepts, guarding the ball, moving on airtime, playing with active hands, boxing out. Like, those are concepts that translate to whatever you're doing, whether
Any
you're
good
playing
defense.
zone or any, yeah. Those are just good basic defensive principles. So, we continue to emphasize that stuff, whatever we're in.
What is your philosophy or coaching mindset on pressing? How much pressing do you put in? Are you a press heavy team, not a press heavy team? What kind of goes into that sort of defensive mindset?
So I like to press in spots. This year, I felt like, again, just being so young, we needed to kind of figure out the half court first and get more physical and all that. We pressed in spots this year. We were able to win a really big league game down the stretch where we were down 8 with 2 minutes left. We had to press about the last probably 4 or 5 minutes of the game just to get us back in. We ended up going to overtime and getting the win that there's no way without that we'd have been able to. Uh, uh, you know, I will admit I don't like giving up layups. Just personally, again, like I said earlier, got to kind of decide what you can live with. There's been years that I've wanted to press all the time coming in, and I've learned enough about myself, I think, to figure out that I don't think mentally I can live with layup.
Yeah.
Those stretches that good teams sometimes will hit you on when you're pressing all the time, where you give up 3 consecutive layups. Uh, so it's going to be part of what we do, rather than I don't really think that's going to be like our full identity. I also think that, if you're a team that has deep tournament aspirations, like, I mean, I think the girls that we have coming back are very talented and now they're a lot more experienced, like, how often, like we may be able to press a lot of teams locally and we may be able to press some teams in our league. And at times we'll do that. But like, are you going to win a district final in the full court against another really good team? Or are you going to win in regionals in the full court against another really good team? Now, a lot of times I think the answer is maybe no, unless you just have exceptional athletes. So, I think that whatever we do defensively, we want to try to prepare to beat the best teams that we might be able to see. And I think that you don't generally see 32 minutes of pressing work out against the elite level teams.
At some point, you're going to have to sit in man or in the half court in some set, and you're going to just have to sit down and play defense, right? If you really want to
Absolutely.
win. Yeah. And I think that's always been kind of a bit of a challenge for me because I am so press heavy and I really just I would love to just believe, right, that I could just press teams off the floor and just run them out of the gym. But then you face these more experienced teams and they'll just calmly break that press and not be in any rush. And then it's like, well, now we're back in the half court because that it wasn't anything that phased them because they're experienced or they've just played through it a lot, that a press is just going to be
Well,
something that might slow them down for a second and then they'll just get into it and just get into their offense, and we got to get into our half court defense.
and I really enjoy watching teams that are really good up in the full court, and I've got a lot of respect for people that are able to teach that effectively. I don't think that's something that, to this point, that I'm a great pressing coach, and
Mm.
if it's not something that I fully believe in, I think it's not, it's going to be hard to get the necessary buy-in from players. But I do think, coaches that really fit their personality and that really teach it well, I think that's a great weapon to have. And I also think it's a fun style to play that kind of enables you to play a lot of different people as well. So, I like it for our current team, especially since, like I said, a lot of times we're playing two post kids together where
Yeah,
it maybe
that's a
isn't.
bit of a challenge.
Yeah, just trying to put our best groups on the court. A lot of times, our best group kind of consists of both of those ladies. I I felt like it was maybe a little bit more difficult to get good at that this year, but it's definitely something that we want to have because again, at some point you're going to be down late in the game and you're going to need to go to it. So, we'd
Yeah, and I mean it's
like to
nice
have
to
an
be
option in
able
the full court as
to put
well.
it in, even if it just gets the other team to like think a little bit. It's not something you necessarily want to sit in, or you're even trying to, uh break them down with it, but it does make them think and maybe slows them down a little bit because it's just something new that they're going to have to kind of adjust to a little bit, and that could be all that you need out of the press in that sense.
Oh yeah, no, that's a great point. Like I've talked about a little bit with like the buzz and with triangle, giving somebody a different look. And sometimes, I mean, sometimes you're surprised at how well something might work. Like that game where I said we came back late in the game, we're down 8, inside 2 minutes. Like honestly, the team that we were playing would have been one of the last teams that I would have thought that we could have pressed.
Yeah.
They're super quick, very athletic. They had experienced guards, but it was at that point, it was just out of desperation. I mean, otherwise the clock was going to run out. And, I don't think it was even that we were great at it, but we played hard and they made maybe a couple uncharacteristic mistakes. And, we knocked down a shot and it kind of built a little bit of momentum and just kind of changed the complexity of the game a bit.
Well, to add to that point, I have been on coaching staffs and I've seen success pressing a team that you normally wouldn't think you'd be successful with. And I realized reflecting on it, me and the other coaches, is that other teams didn't really press this one particular team because they just assumed that they would be able to break it because of the athletes that they had, but nobody had really tested them, and we were one of the first teams to really like test their ability to break a press, and it really did fluster them. So don't necessarily make assumptions just on athletic ability or what you think they can do. Go ahead and press them and see if they can actually break it.
Oh yeah, no, that's a great point. And again, I just think this philosophy of having a couple options to use whatever those options may be, you know, throughout a game. Hey, this isn't working. Let's go to plan B. Let's go to plan C. And you might stumble upon something. Well, so years ago, my last year coaching boys, honestly, we didn't have a real strong group that year. I think we'd only won 6 games in the regular season. And, we had played almost all man. And, the buzz at that point wasn't something that I was familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So we went into a first round tournament game and we had seen on film, we had like a week to prepare. So it was like, okay, we could experiment a little bit. Well, we had seen the team that we were going to play had struggled playing against 1-3-1, and we had not played any 1-3-1.
Yeah.
So we put it in at practice and we thought, well, let's just have it if we need it. Well, we started, man, we didn't use the 1-3-1. We win the game without it. So our second game, we're playing a really strong team. I think we might have started 2-3, and then we played man. We're down 17 at halftime. And I mean, they're just better than we are.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, well, hey, we just spent a week, working on this 1-3-1. Let's try it. I mean, we held them to 7 points in the second half and won the game.
Wow, that's great.
It wasn't great coaching. It was, hey, we don't have any ideas left. There was no logical reason why we could play 1-3-1
But
against
let's
this
let's
team, to
do
be
it.
honest with you. But no, the kids played super hard, and it kind of broke their rhythm a little bit, and we were able to win that game. So then the next game, we thought, let's just stay in it. We won the next game too, you know, something that we literally had not played a possession of all year long, but just kind of having a different option at the right time, let us go on a pretty fun run.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. And I think that that's just a perfect encapsulation of the whole topic of, put it in, if you got confidence in your guys, your girls, and just want to see what happens, go for it. And you can be surprised really at what how adaptable a team can be if they have those good defensive principles. You can almost put them in anything for even a little bit, even if it is just a few minutes, and it could just be enough to get the momentum where you want it to be. I think that's really cool. I think that'd be great to just be able to, put something in just for a few minutes, and just the look itself might be confusing enough for the other team, even if your guys or girls aren't exactly running it to perfection. It just looks different, and that could be all that you really need out of it.
Absolutely.
Coach, to wrap up, there's a couple questions that I ask every guest, so I'm going to go ahead and start here with this first one, which is thinking back on your coaching career, what is a moment from your coaching career that you think others listening would be able to learn from?
Um, so I would say, throughout my career, I've learned and I'm continuing to learn to not assume anything that, our perceptions as adults might be very different than the perception of a 15, 16, 17-year-old student athlete, that we're coaching. And, just I think I'm learning to kind of over communicate, making sure that nothing gets kind of lost in translation. I just feel like, as coaches, I think we all have good intentions, but I've had a time or two over the years where, hey, the season ends, and then you realize, well, hey, this player, this kid was maybe upset about their view of something was very different than the coaching staffs, and that wasn't communicated. And now we've got an issue. It maybe led that player to not have the experience that he or she wanted to have. Uh,
Mm,
you know, I, I think for me, we've got a really good staff kind of getting the help of my staff and leaning on them to help me make sure that, any blind spots that I might have are kind of taken care of, and that have the pulse of the team at any given time. Uh, and just making sure that, that we check up on our kids as much as possible on and off the court, and I think that moving into next year, one of my goals is to really be more intentional about that, having difficult conversations when need be, really over communicating and you know, making sure that players are exactly, are completely aware of maybe where they stand, whether that's role, whether that's playing time, whether that's starting, whatever that may be, rather than to wait and let any like discontent kind of
mm,
linger on and grow as the season goes on. Because again, I think, nobody goes into this job with bad intentions. I think we all want what's best for kids and what's best for our team. But, again, in my case, on the girls' side, how a 15 or 16-year-old young lady perceives things might be different than how myself at 35 years old, obviously in a different role,
yeah, yeah.
are going to perceive things. I think that's something important to remember.
As a girls coach myself, coach, I completely get it. Sometimes I wonder if my girls if we're even speaking the same language sometimes. So I'm with you there. But yeah, don't make assumptions. I think that's a good one here. Communication, communication, and uh, I've learned a lot. I think about being a better communicator for those interactions. So no, I appreciate you sharing that. And to wrap up, I give every guest what I call kind of a 60-second soapbox. It's kind of your platform to get out like a final message, a closing thought, a final idea, just something that you want to leave the listeners with, and you can kind of take it in any direction that you want. So I'm just going to kind of give you the floor, coach, and I'm just going to let you kind of take it from here.
Uh, yeah, thank you. I would maybe just end with just as a reminder to myself as much as anybody else. You know, this profession, I think it's a big responsibility, and I think it's an important job. You know, I think that most adults now that were athletes growing up could probably point to a coach or two or more that had positively impacted them, or maybe even at times that negatively impacted them. And I know that today it's probably kind of a tough environment to be a coach. Obviously there's a lot of second guessing, and social media kind of adds to that scrutiny. I would just remind all of us, not to get caught up in that negativity and just to continue continue doing what's right for our kids, because that's why we're all in this. That's why I wanted to coach to begin with, going back to, again, that grad party when my coach brought it up. I thought it was a really cool opportunity to stay involved with the game, but also to make a difference with young people. And I think that we all just need to remember that, even on the tough days coming after a loss, or having a parent conflict, or an administration conflict, or all the challenges that we go through. Remember why we're doing this and how important the profession is.
That's really well said. I couldn't put it any better. Coach, I really want to thank you for coming on, talking defense, talking about defensive philosophy, talking about blending in your defenses, man, buzz, press, triangle, and two, all that really good stuff. I'm really excited for not only the year that you had and all the success that you have, but the fact that you're going to have a real awesome opportunity with such a young group next year. So thank you. Best of luck. Keep doing what you're doing, especially on the defensive end. And I really look forward to continuing to following your journey next year and see how things are going. Best of luck, Coach. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And thank you all for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast, and we will see you guys next.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.